The future of work and future skills. Imagine getting together thought leaders from corporations, technology, policy, education, into a room for a number of days to talk about the future of work and the future skills required. Over the next 2 days, I'm going to talk to you about some of the drivers that are changing the face of work and some of the skills that are changing the way that we work and what you need to know. Now, we came up with 8 drivers and 10 skills. I'll try to get through as many as I can. We have a short time today. Number 1, pervasive throughout the workshop, extreme longevity. You are going to live to 100. She doesn't believe me. You're probably going to live to 110. A baby born today is projected to live to 120. So I asked that in my research study on leadership with women, over 200 of them, what does that mean to you? Because let's face it, ladies, you're living longer than men. And what do they say? If I have to live to 100, number one, I have to be able to afford to live to 100. If I have to afford to live to 100, that means I have to work till I'm 80. But I've been working since I've been 20. So that means I'm going to be working 60 years. Oh my God, I might outlive companies. 60 years. If I'm going to work 60 years, I have to be healthy. I have to be educated. I have to be technical enough to keep up. Because let's face it, the iPhone is less than 10 years old. Very scary thought for the individual. Now, what do the corporate leaders say? It's playing out in the workforce. There are 3 generations today in the workforce, and in retail, sometimes there's 4. If you're living longer and you don't want to retire, which a lot of people don't, you're going to have a lot of generations in the workforce. And what do? They bring in new ideas, new technologies. It gets very tough for the CIO. It gets very tough for the executives to manage multiple generations in the workforce. A force impacting work. Number 2, we live in a VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. It's actually a military term. This is what a military person feels every day when they're fighting out in warfare. And CEOs said to us, that's our reality. We're living in a VUCA world. We never know when there's a disruptive company at our edges going to come in and steal market share. We don't know when a terrorist is going to pop up and disrupt business. We don't know when there's going to be a natural disaster taking down manufacturing plants. We need people who understand how to move quickly and nimbly in this VUCA world. We are a globally connected world, eBay to Odesk. eBay, I can go out and have done that, opened up a storefront in less than an hour and have taken international currency. Odesk, I have used them. I have gone out and sourced talent everywhere in the world, from statistics to video production to website development, for under $1 an hour. That's scary for individuals, very competitive. Yes, I can have a global marketplace for my business, but I also have a lot of competition. We live in a technology-oriented world. When I grew up, it was a very classical world. A high school degree, a liberal arts degree was enough. We pretty much could get any job anywhere. But today, you're actually existing in a technology-based world. In fact, there's so much data out there, some people say we try to absorb the equivalent of 174 newspapers per day. How do you manage? Cognitive load management is a skill. How do you manage prioritizing that data? So what does that mean on the future of work? Well, we say, well, work is actually superstructing. Well, what does that mean? A new design mindset is a skill set. How do you design a company to maximize the innovation and productivity of your employees? So think about an Apple or a Google or a Facebook that's creating mega campuses with lots of perks to pull people together, the engineers to collaborate and innovate. But at the same time, you have the Ciscos, the IBMs, and the Price Waterhouse who are saying, no, go out, go virtual, be close to the company. And then you have the entrepreneurs who say, I don't need brick and mortar. I can just start up in a Starbucks, right? Different forms of work. So 10 skills. I wish I could get through them all. We'll try. Number 1, sense making. Think of it as uber critical thinking, right? So problem-solving critical thinking are skills that we learned growing up. They still are very important. Now we're going to overlay what are these skills in a technology world and how do they enhance or change. So let me give you an example. Nordstrom is very much like a David Jones store. It's a department store, United States. They're known for their big sales in December and in August. They're also known for having exceptional customer service. They really take care of their customers. Last July, they called me and said, Tracey, we miss you. I said, you miss me? And they said, yes, you usually come in here every December and August for our sales, but you didn't come this December. And so we're worried that we're going to lose you as a customer. Maybe you were traveling. I said, well, how did you know? And they go, well, we've been collecting your data for 3 years. We look at your purchases, and you know this is happening everywhere on your Facebook pages. So what did they do? They're collecting my data. They said, I know what departments you shop in. I know the brands that you buy. I know what days that you actually come into the store. And I actually think that we even know your favorite salesperson. In fact, we're going to give you a $50 gift certificate. And it's going to be here waiting for you at the store in your favorite department. And Carrie, your favorite salesperson, she's off on the typical week that you come in to shop in August. But her manager, Megan, would be happy to help you out. So what are they doing? They're taking the data and they're making sense of it in a way that helps them accelerate their business with me, create customer intimacy, increase their sales, and personalize the shopping for me even more. Technology combined with customer service. Okay, new media ecology. You're out on YouTube. We know that people use multimedia. The skill is really being able to use multimedia as a communication tool and to be able to express yourself using multimedia. I'm going to give you 3 examples. I use multimedia quite a bit. One in healthcare, one in art, and one in the news. So you can see the transformations that are happening. You may be aware of it, but you may not realize it. So let's look at the first one. The show NCIS, CSI, The Morgue, right? I always have students who say, I want to be a mortician. They're all of a sudden inspired because of the dead body, right? And I said, well, that's really interesting because, yes, if you want to be a mortician or work in the morgue, yes, you're going to have the subject matter expertise of understanding how to work with bodies. But in reality, this is what you're going to be doing. This is a virtual autopsy using augmented virtual reality. There's collaboration going on between many of these morticians or duckies from NCIS who are working together. Subject matter expertise overlaid with the use of technology, combining the 2 skills together. The next one I'm going to show you was a video sent to me from an art history professor. She said, Tracey, my students came to the class, we opened up the textbook, I tried to get them to go to the museums, and they fall asleep. I saw this video out on YouTube, and I got so inspired, I brought it into the classroom. Well, it ended up that my students got inspired too. In fact, as a result of me playing these videos, and this person on YouTube, by the way, has many other artists, my students went to the library even more because they were fascinated. They were trying to figure out what paintings were getting merged in the video, and it drove them to the museum. So being able to use multimedia as a way to engage students, or even in a museum to engage consumers, is new media ecology and the use of multimedia literacy. Let's look at the last example. E-paper. Out in Palo Alto, where I live, in California, I was brought into the labs to look at that very thin video paper. It's very exciting. I'm sure many of you have seen it or heard of it. This is where news is going. Customized video paper, one sheet. You shake it, and the news comes up from the local area. In fact, the customized the ads on the back. She's a runner. There's Nike coming down the back. And you know, right, you're looking at your devices, the tablets are getting thinner and thinner, right? We're wrapping video now around our wrists, right? And pretty soon we'll be reading on the Pebble Watch and wrapping video around. Custom newspapers. Okay, cross-cultural competency. So I worked at Apple Computer years ago, and I was in manufacturing, and pretty much international business was very face-to-face. From the States, we'd be commuting to Taiwan or to Singapore or to Japan. We would learn a little bit of language and maybe a little bit about cross-culture, but for the most part, it was back and forth, back and forth. Today, flash forward, when I joined a company called Cisco System, they used a lot more technology, and technology had advanced. And they said, well, now that you're still in manufacturing and international manufacturing, we're going to use more technology. So you're going to run those projects not face-to-face anymore. You're going to be running projects using WebEx and telepresence. What kind of skills, right? How do you shift your project management skills from a face-to-face environment into something called virtual collaboration? It's actually a skill. You might be doing it every day, but for some people, that's a big jump. Virtual collaboration. Okay, so let me just stop this one. So here I am at Cisco, and Cisco was very small when I joined them. But then it grew and grew and grew. In fact, they had headquarters in California and in Europe and also in India. And so we started to use the technology of telepresence to be able to have company meetings. And it worked quite well as long as you're video conferencing this room connecting to that room. But then people said, well, there's executive leaders in Europe and in San Jose and in India, and we actually want to see them all together talking on a stage. So Cisco said, well, how are we going to do that? Could technology help us? So they came up with holography-based telepresence. Now, works very well. I don't have a good example from Cisco, but I found a very good example from CNN. So let's look at how holography can bring people closer to you so that you can experience people talking from different parts of the world.
There are 35 high-definition cameras ringing me, in a ring around me. I'm in the center, and they shoot my body at different angles, and I'm told that transmits what looks like an entire body image back there to New York. These cameras, I'm told, talk to the cameras in New York, so they move, and they know when to move when the cameras in New York move, and it looks a little different from a real person there, but it's pretty remarkable.
It's still Jessica Yellen, and you look like Jessica Yellen, and we know you are Jessica Yellen. Let's get back to the important
Okay. Telepresence and holography, and we know that that's moving to the mobile devices as well. So our meetings will definitely be able to connect with each other. The AnyBot, this is actually a photograph I took at Stanford. The AnyBot, Julie, was in there, telepresence on a robot, remote control from her home. She joined our meeting. It was lovely because I could actually change her height to be at peer-to-peer with me. She's sitting in that little top part there. And she rolls around and she participates in meetings. When Julie's done with the meeting, she checks out of the AnyBot, and Joe checks in. And then Joe and I go walk around Stanford, and we go to other meetings. So the AnyBot now has combined robotics, the rise of smart machines, with the telepresence. Well, think about that. When I used to be traveling back overseas in manufacturing, it would have been so much easier if I had an AnyBot, that I could go up and down the manufacturing lines rather than flying back and forth. Think about medical. Doctors could actually see remote patients. Nurses could run practicals in education. Right? The profound ability to use the technology in different and unique ways. The rise of smart machines. How do you make them? How do you use them? Novel and adaptive thinking, another skill. Let me give you an example. Out in Silicon Valley in Almaden, there's Watson. Watson is a supercomputer made by IBM. You can play Jeopardy with Watson, and you're guaranteed to lose. Because Watson is fed, right, with analytics, artificial intelligence, and has all of the data and answers, and processes very, very quickly the answers, so you're always going to lose. So, big deal. It's a supercomputer. So what did IBM scientists say? Well, what if we took Watson and pumped into Watson instead all of the information about cancer, symptoms, prescriptions, medical solutions, some that we know and some controversial. And what if we let Watson run like a supercomputer and see if Watson can beat us to a cure for cancer? Turning the machine from a competition to competing with machines. Novel and adaptive thinking. You have to understand the technology and overlay it with the subject matter expertise that the healthcare providers to see how we can move society ahead. Let me give you another example. 3D printing. Let me just explain it if you don't understand 3D printing. Imagine a printer filled with plastic or metal, and you put in a program and it just prints out a device. Could be a toy, could be a metal object. It could be a prototype. It's changing manufacturing on its head. Novel and adaptive thinking. What if we take 3D printing, which is working in manufacturing, and bring it into healthcare? In fact, what would happen if we filled the printer and made ears? Let's take a look. This one you need to turn up.
I'm Dr. Benasser, and my lab makes ears. The invention that we've discovered is a way to print living cells in a material that can be used to reconstruct tissues in the body. My laboratory is interested in regenerating cartilage wherever it's found in the body. The process starts with a scan of an ear. We sit someone down in a chair, and we have a camera that spins around their head and takes a 3D image of their head. We then can very precisely map out the topology of the ear. The next kind of key step is developing the ink for this printer. This ink is actually a living ink. It contains living cells. It's alive when we put it into the printer. It's alive when it comes out of the printer. The real power of the printing technique is that it can be used to make geometries that you just can't make with any other technique. You can make parts with holes in them. We can layer and cover and put different cells next to each other to create really the complex organs that make up our bodies. And after 2 months in an incubator, the tissue fills in and looks white, just like real cartilage. The implants that we're making are not rubber or plastic. They are alive. They grow inside the body or out. And this has a whole host of advantages over conventional technology. The body accepts these materials like it's part of the body because it is. Our long-term goals are to change the way that clinicians practice, to give them the next generation of implants that will be more successful, more like real tissue that will last in the body for decades.
Profound. So let's talk about automotive and robotics. Cars are everywhere. When I grew up, cars had 4 wheels and it changed the oil. That was it. Today you can get an inexpensive car like a Nano, you can get an expensive car like a Bugatti, you can get an electric car, you can get a hybrid car, and now you can get a robotic car, an autonomous car. Complicated cars. In fact, they're so complicated that General Motors, a major auto manufacturer, now has call centers for people like me who don't know how to start my car, who don't know how to use the GPS in my car. And you certainly know you can't change your oil, change your tire on your cars anymore. That's left for the next generation kind of auto repair mechanic who is not the same kind of person that you would imagine that you've had before. In fact, this is a BMW auto mechanic. He is using augmented virtual reality to guide him through auto repair. He is wearing wearable technology goggles with sound coming into his ears telling him exactly what to do, training him, and he talks back. So go figure, if you want to be an auto mechanic, it's getting pretty complicated. Subject matter expertise, overlaid with augmented virtual reality and wearable technologies. I'm not going to play it too long because we're running out of time. Okay, so yes, in California you do see the Google autonomous car. It goes up and down our freeways. In fact, I was leaving the Future of Work session and a taxi driver said to me, "I don't have a job anymore." And I said, "Why don't you have a job anymore?" And they said, "Well, Google came into San Francisco and Nevada and applied for taxi permits for their autonomous car. I thought I had a job for life, and I don't anymore, and I really don't know what I'm going to do." Robotics. Now, on the Google side, they say, well, wait a minute. What about the people who are drinking and driving, texting and driving, talking and driving, eating and driving, or handicapped and can't drive? Autonomous cars can do a great benefit for society. It's not always, don't always think about it replacing jobs. There's robotic bellboys. If you go into New York, this bellboy is actually an arm that will lift your suitcases for you, check in, check out. And of course, there's robotic barbers, because everyone thinks the hairdresser will never go away. Well, I guess we'll be surprised about that. I'm going to end with this last video, and we can explain it when we're sitting on the couch. I'm sure many of you have seen it before. It's called the virtual choir. One of the last forces that I'll discuss is called information sociology. That means the pervasive use of social media in business and society. How do we capture the use of social media? This video fascinated me. It's actually quite old, but it fascinated me on how this conductor uses social media to pull together people. And this, if you could turn it up, but when the sound starts. This conductor invited 185 students using social media to submit the same song, sing it into their computer, and he would create a product. This is the result, is a virtual choir. It's a concert. The use of social media and technology to be able to create a work of art or a product is something that we can think about, the types of skills, the kinds of opportunities for our work today. I'm going to end it there. I want to thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Would you like to join on the couch and Russell as well?